All right, all right. I think I'm live. Hi, everybody. Let me know, please, in the chat if you can hear me right, if you can see me right. And I'm going to start. Thank you so much for joining me. If this is your first time, these are our monthly workshop with the Academy where you can send me your work and I go through it and give you feedback. So I have a few pieces that I want to check today. Before I start, just checking to my iPad right now because I'm putting the chat on my iPad so I can see. And for what I see, it started. So hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. And I think I'm going to start sharing my screen right away. And I will start working on your material. Thank you for everybody that sent me their work. Always love to do some critiques on it. And today I'm going to start with the work of Maggie. All right. Maggie, thank you so much for sharing. Actually, no, I'm going to start with Cameron. Cameron, you didn't send me any images. You're asking me about rendering faces and you have trouble with the rendering in general. I would have loved to give you feedback, Cameron, but because I don't have any images of yours, it's hard for me to give you feedback precisely to help you. So please, if you are in the chat right now, just try to maybe, I'm assuming you should still have access to the form. Just maybe try to put your file in it and I'll see at the end. So let's start with Maggie. Maggie, thanks for sharing your work. You send me, do you not have any specific question? Just professional eye on your work. Perfect. Well, first of all, you did an amazing job. That's first of all. I think your portrait is amazing. It's really nicely in proportion. I mean, it's very close to be perfect when it comes to comparing it. I think you've been boosting the colors at the right places, like the lips, the eyes. I feel like the skin tone is a bit maybe too pale, but that's a preference of mine, so it has nothing to do with the work that you've done. I think you did a great job. Things that I could see that you could have done maybe a little bit would be like the hair, adding just a little bit more of those reflection in the hair would have been good. It's missing a bit of that. A little bit more of the different tones into the eyebrows. But beside that, you did a great job. So let me see what I can do. Because you see there's like just a little bit more of a difference in the hair. And I want to say hi to Bob. Hi, thanks for joining. So just maybe just a little bit more. I'm going to take a saffron brush here. To just add a little bit more of that, and it's very subtle, right? But that's what I feel like it's missing. Just a little bit more of that. That volume on the hair for a few places, like you did it here. That's good. Also, just the general shape of the hair here. It's a bit too smooth and equal. I would have liked to just see just some places that are a little bit sharper. That goes into the head a little bit more. And I see Rogue Spectre 101. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with your comment. It's a beautiful portrait I'm working on. So yeah, so I think just adding a little bit more, maybe the brush that I have is a bit too sharp for that. What I could do is kind of just soften it up with the smudge tool afterwards. I would probably have to change the color. I'm just gonna create a new layer here, put it to color, and just try to change that because that should be a little bit more like that skin color. And then go back with that airbrush and add a few more details on that. So yeah, just a few more places I think like that. I think like the cut of the hair is just too broad. So you see, hopefully you're able to see that, but it's very subtle because I don't have much to say about your portrait. It's very nicely done. I think you know what you're doing, and yeah. And like Bob says in the comment, yeah, the change in the eyes are just amazing. But just adding like a little bit more of different values, very subtle values in the eyebrows. I'm sorry if I sound a little bit slow today. I think I'm getting a little bit sick. But I'll do my best to be entertaining. So yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say. If I have to compare like the the skin tone, sorry for that. Like maybe the nose. I'm being very like detail oriented here because I guess I think you did a great job, but maybe the nose could be added just a little bit more dark spot. I feel like the highlights maybe are a little bit too much. Like here too. That could be just a little bit less. And maybe that this highlight could have been just a little bit sharper here. It's very small details that I'm going there and there. But yeah, beside that, I think you did an amazing job. I can only speak with like personal preferences. Like I would add like bigger freckles because I really like freckles. I'm looking if maybe I don't have it installed. But yeah, even that. I think, yeah, I would add a bit of bigger freckles because I love it. But I think you did really an amazing job already. So thanks for sharing, really. That's pretty much all I have to say. I hope my tips were helping, but you don't need much help on this portrait. I think it's really, it's really good. I think you should try maybe to next time to push maybe the limits of the conceptualization. So you're really good at stylization a portrait. Maybe you can add some details next time. So changing the haircut, you know, trying to do from a little bit more from imagination with different references. So maybe like, you know, if you like that face, you can put a different haircut on it, a different clothing, and try to pick up the skills that you have right now are really good. You're able to inspired very closely from a reference photo and make it your own. So maybe what you would like to do is just try to create something from scratch next time. But yeah, thanks for sharing. Beautiful work. Next we have Ben. Ben with this beautiful portrait. Oh, before that I have Dilipa that says that you wanted to have the portrait course and the webinar. Those two things might be, well, the portrait course, the 1 week portrait might be added to the Academy in a later date, but it's not guaranteed yet. I'll let you know, guys, by email if I do it. And when it comes to the webinar, well, the webinar was just for the period during the launch, which we are over now. But if you saw the webinar, you were able to get the PDF files of the slides. If you didn't get that, you can always email me at hello@paintable.cc, hello@paintable.cc, and I'll make sure to send them your way. So now, Ben, sorry again for people in the chat. I keep like clearing my throat. I think I'm getting sick. I'm really happy with the illustration, and so should you. It's a beautiful illustration. You want to push it, I think, to improve. Cool. All right. First of all, beautiful work, man. I really love it. I think it's you know, three light source. That's already hard to do, and really nice conceptualization. The texture is really cool. A few things to push it for me would be to push the texture, I think, which is a big thing, and maybe try to push the light of the eyes. I feel like they're not glowing enough. Let's try that. So what I'll do is maybe with normal first. I'll just so I just with a normal, like a normal layer, adding a little bit more of that glow. And then I'm going to try with the color dodge and see what it does. Maybe I'll go with something darker. Yeah. Just make it glow a tiny bit more. Because right now, the way you put them, they feel like they're light, but there's no there's barely a little bit of reflection. I feel like they would be like more reflection on those eyes if they were that much glowing. And maybe, just maybe. Yeah, sorry for sounding croaky, but yeah, I guess that's the thing with lives. You never know how you're gonna feel, but yeah, I'll be fine. So yeah, I feel like just having a little bit more of that glow showing would be good. That reflection, basically. And if I were to do this, I would right now I'm doing it just live. I'm doing the best that I can, but I would definitely go find some references, either from artists that already did those kind of glowing eyes or any kind of light that is glowing. Right now I'm trying to do it from memory, trying to show you what I can do real fast. But definitely, if you were to just rework on that thing, I would say go first, find some reference photos. But I really think that's the one thing that's missing here, because the original one, you see them glowing, and I like the contrast of it. Like they're very punchy, but they don't feel like they're actually in the dark glowing because there's no reflection all over them. So I would try to add maybe that a little bit, and then probably that I would, weird enough, I'm going to try to darken just to see the effect burn, just to see if, oops, like if I burn it, what's going to keep. Then it would just, just adding just a little bit more of that glow, I think would be great. Yeah, true. Darken do really use them, Bob. So yeah, so that was one thing. The other thing is the texture that I was saying. You did a great texture, and you really took your time to add tiny highlights everywhere, which is great. But I feel like the cracks itself, they're too homogene. I don't know if that's in English. Homogene, like they're too similar to each other. They're too much the same. Like I would have loved to see like more bigger cracks at some places, like pieces that are missing, to just add a little bit more visual interest. Because right now it looks like a portrait. It doesn't look like the wood. The texture is good, but you would have more imperfections into those cracks. I'll try to show you like what I mean by that. So you would have like a little bit of a imperfection here. Maybe that thing is actually like raising up. Maybe there's like some sort of a change here. How would I do that? I would probably take a little bit more light here, put it over there, and then a little bit more of the shadow here, and then like, like trying to put on some imperfections, basically. So I'm just going to try to. I think pieces of wood like that are just getting up a little bit. Thanks, LA. Thanks, LA. So yeah, homogeneous. Yes. So yeah, so I would definitely add a little bit more of that. I would add interest. So you can see already, like, that makes, to me, it makes it like just more interesting to look at. So having those places and chunks that you can take out. So imagine that, well, that's a good example, but it could even be like very more dramatic and be like, all right, so there's like a whole chunk here missing. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to add a hole right there, which then becomes to a crack that then links to this one or something like that. And then you just have to make sure that you do the same treatment. So making sure that you have the edge of the light that goes at the right place. And then probably that would kind of bounce there a little bit. Maybe you had a different tone a little bit here. Stuff like that, just to add a little bit more of that old, puppet, wood puppet kind of thing on it. But that's pretty much what I would have to say. Maybe the lines of the nose as well kind of are killing the texture here, because I don't think you would have much of those like lines always like in all kinds of direction like this. It's kind of giving away the fact that it's an illustration, this is not a problem. I'm not using the right word. Not that it's an illustration, but that's not wood. I feel like I'll try to fix that. That's going to be hard without your layers, but like I feel like the fact that they're all like in all sorts of direction here kind of give it away. Like I would probably, see. Probably try to keep the same direction, because the piece, like you imagine that this is one big piece of wood, right? So like the grain kind of go in the same direction. There's already like a little bit of like shapes in the grain, which is not a problem. But I feel like if you put too much, then it kind of looks weird. Like I like the crack here. Like that crack could be like bigger for sure. And then catch a little bit more light here. And then just make sure like you have the lines here. Like I would probably like see like this is direction, this is a completely different direction. I would have probably I'm gonna have to just do that here real quick. I would probably try to keep the same direction of the grain here. And like here, you can imagine that maybe there's a crack here. There's a piece of that nose, it's away. And things like that. Just making sure that it makes sense in terms of the direction of the grain. But all of that to say that you did an amazing job. It's really nice pieces, and it's already working really well. As you see, I don't have much to say about the light direction. I think you pretty much nailed it. It's pretty good. It's really just the fine tuning, the details, really. So thanks for sharing. Love to being able to work on this. Next we have Fabrizio. Fabrizio, you're talking about brushes, for what I remember. Having trouble with blocking the shapes and later rendering. Yes, LA, I do agree. The lighting is actually pretty complex on it. So this is your 5th version after trying a different solution. Any suggestion? Let's go see what you did. So first of all, if that's your outline, amazing, really beautiful. Feels a little bit like Frank Franzetta. So maybe it's Frank Franzetta. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if you took like one of his sketch and then did some rendering on it. But I'm assuming that's the part that you want a question about. When it comes to, because the question is how can I have a better flow with your brushes. It's all about having like just like the basic ones at the beginning. So the hard edge brush, I'm going to show that to you. The hard edge brush, something like this, for example. I'm going to put a different color so you see it's like very hard, and a soft one to do some blurring. Those two brushes at the beginning are perfect for learning because you don't want to have too much texture. If you put too much texture, it's going to become very muddy and busy, and then it's going to be hard for you to actually build your illustration. What you need to do now with those two brushes that I'm sure you have already is be more decisive about the shapes of your illustration. I'm going to put these and these together and just show you what I mean. So that and that. I'm going to use the sketch here to show you. So look at those differences between those two. This feels patchy in terms of shapes. Your shapes are not very well defined. You put like a lot of, and there are a lot of contrast too, right? Here the shapes are very, very nicely defined, but then again, this is an outline, a sketch, so it's hard to say. But still, what you need to do is to be more decisive about your shapes. So first of all, the contrast, like try to have less contrast when you're starting to render. Like this is like a lot of contrast. You want to add the highlights once your shapes are already established. Just take out the contrast for now. Having darker is going to help you. And then, all right, so is that your shape? If that's your shape, just try to be really assertive, or like having like decided that that's the shape. Like, okay, then maybe that's like, I'm trying to look at the sketch here. Try to have hard shape. Like if you did the 1 week portrait with us, I hope you did, because then you'll know what I mean by shapes here. It's really to make sure that each values and each shape needs to be placed very precisely. And it's hard with this sketch. The sketch that you started is really difficult, because if I look at the sketch itself, you would have like the moonlight from the back that bounce on that character. You would have like a ring of light here, and then this part would be sort of kind of in the shadows. I don't know how he used this image to actually render it, but it would have been really hard. But that's the one thing it's missing here, I think, because there's a lot of muscles and small rendering parts that you can do here. So what you need is really to just simplify those things as much as possible. Try to simplify your shapes first. Like if I were to do the rendering from this place, for example, I would start by putting just one value on the character, and then I would try to probably, what, I'm going to do that here. And then I would try to, maybe with a saffron brush, establish just a general kind of light direction. Like the light's coming from the moon, and then probably that the shadows are getting on this side. So you understand the general lighting of it. Not sure exactly what's happening here. I'm guessing that's holes. So that's like the general lighting of it. And then what you want to do is really go in there and just be like, all right, well, he already created the shadows for you, really. Like those are the shadows that you're supposed to actually paint. And so you can actually use those and then just, oops, just basically use those to, with the values that's creating, to build this illustration one piece of muscle at a time. I'm using the saffron brush here to just like smudge the values that he already created. But that would be my, yeah, that would be my way to approach this one, because the kind of like different artists have different kinds of technique, right? And this artist, assuming it's Franz Frazetta, but this artist has a very good beginning with a sketch. Like the sketch is very, shows already like the muscles, the muscle mass. So you want to try to, that's too much. You want to try to keep that as much as possible and then build on that slowly. Build that muscle one piece at a time like this. So I hope this is helping. Ben, you're welcome. Absolutely welcome. It was nice to work on your piece. So yeah, I want to say, Fabrizio, I hope this is helping. Thanks for sharing. Next, we have the work of Lucas. Lucas, thank you for sharing. Lucas, you went through the new section of the Academy. I hope you had fun with it. I really had fun creating it. And you're telling me that you had difficulties to make it look smooth with the line work. And I wasn't sure exactly what you meant, so I meant to compare it with the class and see what I could say about your work, because I think you're pretty close already. What you're missing maybe is just a little bit more of volume. And so I wanted to talk about that because I think your ratio line work color is pretty good here. So what I would do as a tip is tell you that each separate shape needs to be rendered one by one, right? So taking your time and imagine everything always like it's a ball. I'm going to show you an example here. Imagine it's a ball, right? And with a saffron brush, what you want to do is put the basic rendering on it. So imagine that the light direction from the mushroom, for example, starts and goes here. You see with the ball, it's easy to just round it up. So I'm just putting like a light value where the light's going to hit, and then I can put a dark value at the back of it. Whoops. See. Okay, that's why. So let's do that again. So that's the light that's bounced, and then you can put like a shadow like that. So that's what you want to do. You want to just build with a saffron brush first, each shape one at a time. So that works really fine for this shape. When it comes to your mushroom, and I'm just going to use the pen tool here real quick. And make a selection. When it comes to the mushroom, and sorry again for people that just like show up if you didn't want to know at the beginning, the reason why I sound groggy using the word of Bob is I think I'm getting sick. Sorry for that. Color dodge is one of them, but I feel like you should have started just a little bit darker. So you know what? I'm going to put that to multiply for now. Not too dark. Maybe like a little bit desaturated. So you want to start with like something that's a little bit darker at first, and then you want to just go ahead and add some color dodge at the right places. And what I'm doing is I'm doing big brush and then smaller brush to go hit smaller spot on that thing, you know, until I get to the right spot. And you can even use another color blending mode like multiply on a new layer to just add, I'm going to use colors though, just add a little bit of edges of darkness all around it. That's going to round up your shape, your form. make it look just that much more round. Because I think that's what's missing on yours. It's just a little bit more form to it. Just push that, and you'll have already much better results. Also, when you look at the bottle, for example, try to, like, when there's like a change of planes, and I'll show you in a second what I mean by change of planes. Like, this is one plane, right? So, like, wait, let me do this for a second. So this is one plane, this is one plane, this is one plane, this is one plane, right? So it's like the bottle, if I were to look it on the side view, it goes like that, that, and then that, right? So all those planes will receive light differently. I know that's a little bit more advanced, talking about light and all, but I'm sure you'll understand the example I'm going to give you here. What you want to do is simply, you want to just, you want to build one plane at a time. So in case of this example, for example, I'm going to add a layer of color dodge with some more saturation into it. And you want to really take your time, one plane at a time. And here I'm going to just add some more darkness here. And if you have like something more metallic, like the bottle, for example, having a little bit more contrast. And contrast, if you don't know what that means, contrast means, yeah, you go from a light value to a dark value. And if you do it more abruptly, it's going to look more metallic. Like this is looking already metallic. Look at what happened if I put that very close, whoops, very close together. Now it looks even more metallic because even if I add even more like light value, because usually metal do that, like it does like very sharp lighting like this. And I could just round that a little bit better. So yeah, so if you add more contrast like this, it's going to help you. And if you treat each of those form one by one, you'll be able to just make sure that each of them are very round and 3D looking. Because this is the exercise for this chapter, right? It's to play with the different things that we learn, because it's a beginner's module. But really what you want to do is just concentrate on adding volume. Don't stress too much about the direction of the light. Don't stress too much about if does it looks like realistic, because we didn't go there yet. You'll learn that in the next few modules are to come. But for now, just make sure that every pieces look as it's round, and you'll get it. Thanks for sharing your work, Lucas. So next, we have the work of, I want to say Jilai. I'm sorry if I butcher your name, Jilai. And you wanted to have so you're talking about color adjustment. Should I calibrate my monitor? And using Procreate, the suggestion. All right, cool. First of all, thanks for sharing. Second of all, next time that you're sharing something with me, please give me the reference picture. Same thing, I didn't say that to Maggie. Maggie didn't give me the reference picture. I had to find it. But yours was easy because it's a portrait that I saw a bunch of times, where this one, I have no idea. So Jilail, next time, please give me the reference picture. This one I'm able to push even more illustration, showing you even more tips about it, because now I'm going to have to do it from imagination. So tips about calibrating your screen. Calibrating your screen is good, especially if you're doing printing jobs. And if you're not doing any printing job, then just assure yourself that you're working on a screen with the color that you like, because it doesn't change anything really. It's really rare that it's going to be so much not calibrated that your green is going to look blue and your red's going to look orange. If it's the case, then definitely calibrate your screen, but it's pretty rare. Usually they're close enough. But sometimes if you want to do print that are very precise, then you can calibrate it. So I would not calibrate it. That's my advice to you. I would just make sure that you like the colors on screen and then stick to it. From a device to another device, it's normal to have different changes. My phone doesn't have the same calibration of my screen on my Mac, so that's normal. When it comes to the illustration, it's beautiful. That's A. B, it's missing contrast, and it's missing sharp edges. Right now, it feels a little soft. The hard edge that you have here is good enough, especially for hair, but the face here looks kind of blurry because the edges are kind of lost. So what you want to do here to help you first is maybe add a little bit more contrast. So what I would do is like you want to have contrast all around her. Just make her pop a little bit better. I'll do the hair afterwards. So that's one thing. Being able to, like, if you're doing like a flat background, what's going to happen is this. It's depending on if you have pale skin or dark skin, contrast will make your illustration get lost in the background. So you see, I just added just a little bit of that shape, and it makes the face pop a lot more. So that's the one thing. I would just make sure that you know, you have enough contrast, and you could do the opposite here if you wanted to, and add just kind of, you know. So you know, let me show you that. So what I would do usually is this: when you have light, especially if you have like a flat background, if you have light coming, let's say from this direction in this case, it means usually that this is going to be darker and this is going to be lighter, sort of. It's not really always like that, but it really works well for this. So what you have to remember is if the light comes this way, then this is supposed to be dark and this is supposed to be light. And you'll see I'm going to do a trick here. I'm just going to use a gradient map. I'm going to use a gradient map like this one. Change the color here to something more pale and saturated, and change this color here to something darker and saturated. And I'm going to do this. And then that, I'm going to put it to, well, I'm going to have to do it in 2 shots. All right, let's do that again. So what I'll do is this. I'm going to put it darker. Oops, darker. So that's going to be darker here, something like that. On a new layer, though. Yeah, well, thanks for being here with me, Rogue. No problem. I totally understand. So yeah, that's one of them, and then the next one is and then I'm going to just do, so I have like, so I'm just putting like, instead of having a flat gradient, so that's the trick I'm trying to do. Sorry, maybe I'm being confusing right now. Instead of having a flat background like this, a flat color, I'm going to put like lights like this. And what you want to do, I'm going to put them together. And then I'm obviously going to delete what's in the illustration part using the right brush for that. So you can imagine that this way it's going to give you the contrast for the hair, which is darker on a lighter background, and the contrast for the skin on a darker background. Something like that. And it's going to make your character pop a little bit more. Now I feel like the dark side could have been like a little bit more pushed, but I think you get the picture. It's going to make just your character just pop a little bit more. So that's one thing. It's going to help you with the edges. The other thing, I think it's definitely missing. It's missing some harder shadows, and that's why I would love to have like your reference picture, because it's hard for me to like maybe the picture is very soft in shadows, and so maybe I'm pushing them for no reason right now, but I feel like that's what's missing. Like if the light comes this way, probably that like you would have like a little bit of a stronger shadow. Use a saffron brush, stronger shadow at the jaw here, which doesn't have to be super sharp, but you know, that's maybe too sharp actually. But let me try to round that up a little bit. It's too much. Right on multiply. Oh, that's why. Put that to normal. Here, I'll do that. And then just delete what's there. And just having just a little bit more of a jawline. It's going to bring back some volume to this illustration. I might add even just a little bit of the corner here. Need that. Just adding a little bit more of this. The hair will be the same thing. For the hair, I'm going to use just the overlay with black and white, I guess. I would probably have darker hair like at the back like this. I'm just going to delete, whoops. Just going to delete that here. Like it's missing volume, basically. It's what's missing. I'm going to put that down a tiny bit. Just a little bit more volume. That's all we need. Now, this is, I guess, an Asian ethnicity. So you would not have like very like pronounced eye socket like Caucasian, where we have like a lot of shadow there. But still, adding just a bit of shadow, I feel like it's going to add just a little bit more of structure in the face. I'm going to try to just add a little bit without changing the look of her face. But just a bit more contrast, a bit more volume. I think it's what's missing here. Things like you would have like the hair here as a shadow. Probably the neck here would probably go just darker in the shadow here. Even darker than that. I'm on overlay, that's why. So that probably go darker, I guess. And then trying to push even more the contrast in the hair. You would need just a bit more contrast. Maybe that's too much, but let's give it a try. Just have just more volume and more shape to that hair. Then that one is passing in front, and then there's some shadow here, so there goes more to the shadow. That's definitely darker. So that's what I would try to do, and just reestablish that also that maybe that hair to be just a bit darker to help with the edge of the face here, which I feel like is getting lost too much. So maybe you have like, because the hair stops there. So I guess the hair, okay, so if the hair stops there, I guess there would be no hair there. So what I would do is then just making sure that either you have a hedge of light, assuming bouncing on her face, kind of here, that just reestablish the edge here, because otherwise it's getting too lost and kind of losing where's that face stopping. And that's all about contrast. I would probably then erase that to just have even something more clear. So yeah, see, you put some hair here, so I'm assuming it's doing that shape. So maybe I would actually add, the hair then, which will help to distinguish where the face is stopping, because it's missing some edge. I think I repeat myself. Sorry for repeating myself. Sometimes you get concentrated when you're painting, and I realize I've been talking for like minutes without really thinking about what I'm saying, just because I'm concentrated. But yeah, I hope all of this is clear. What I'm trying to do really is just add the contrast. Like maybe like all the background here should actually be like just darker, to just establish that contrast a little bit more, that face that pops. Same thing here. Maybe the contrast needs to be, well, maybe less than that, but infinitely more than what it was. Then we have like a shadow here to help you with this. And then that hand should definitely have some darker values, and same thing here. So it's missing contrast basically. But yeah, if next time you can give me your reference picture, then I'll be able to give you more in depth. I think for now, I'm going to leave that to this. Thank you for sharing your work, Jalaye. It's beautiful. It's really a good start. Just try to give a little bit more contrast to it, a little bit more light direction so we understand it, and you're going to have a great piece of portfolio. Thanks for sharing. Next, we have the work of Ken. Ken, thanks for sharing. Ken, you were saying, just want some help with texture. Happy with the tone. Little pop. All right, cool. So let's find your portrait, which I believe is a self-portrait, which is very nice. I'm actually due to do another one. I think the last one I did was like 2 years ago. I'm gonna add some pixels so I can give you some better feedback. So texture. Well, if you go in the Academy, you're gonna have a set of. I think I have it somewhere. Must have it somewhere. I hope I have it. Paintable brushes, texture, skin texture. Perfect. Skin texture. You can start with that. I think just a little bit of that skin texture will help. I'm gonna make a copy here. So what you want to do is, once you establish your lighting, like you did here, you just want to take a skin texture and just add some. See, already just that is going to add a little bit more visual interest. What you want to do is, either you want to use like a blending mode, like maybe multiply. What I would do is just paint a little bit on a new layer, and then you can play with the opacity and take it out a little bit. That's one thing. So that's one thing you can do. Another easy way to add texture without having to go through all the portrait and putting like skin texture everywhere is, instead of doing that, simply go for the highlights with the texture. So I would take something maybe like this, and then just add, you know what, I think for this portrait itself, I would actually not go with like that small of a texture. I would probably go with something a little bit more textural like this, and then you just want to push the texture a little bit, and then that's going to add a lot of visual appealing. And just on a new layer, make sure that you're on a new layer, and then you can delete whatever it's not working. And I would probably create a few layers like that and just try to add just a little bit of that texture. You see, like I did like 2 layers. One, it's going to be subtle on the screen, but 1 and 2. That's it. And because I put it in the highlights, our brain starts analyzing the illustration and kind of tells the brain that there's texture everywhere. It's a cool trick. It's like almost like an illusion. And you can do the same thing with like the nose here. You can just add just a little bit more of that texture. Maybe there's little bit here on the nose, and then you want to go back with your saffron brush and kind of delete a little bit because you want it to be subtle. Don't want it to be too much in the face of the viewer. But just adding that little bit at the right place where the highlights are, like where the light is supposed to be bouncing, like this, here, maybe even here, is going to just add a little bit more visual interest on the whole illustration. So that's a great way to add texture. A mistake that most beginners do is to add then texture on the background. You didn't do it. I just wanted to say that before you do it, because like one of people would do like, all right, so I'm gonna take a brush with like texture and then add texture to the background. I mean, if it's really stylized, it won't do much. It's gonna be fine. But because it's gonna be very sharp in terms of contrast with the edges, it's going to take out the it's going to take out from the portrait, especially when it's like a close-up like this one. So if you want to put texture on the background, I would go with the texture that's like more like small particles, which got here, dots. Small particles that are just, yeah, it can be really small. And then I would maybe go even further and just put the opacity down to that to just add just something about it. But small particles like that also are really great to play with the shadows. Like let's say like your cap here, you could just take that, boost a little bit, and then just add just a little bit of those particles, a little bit. And it deletes what's outside of the cap, and then you can, with the saffron brush, just delete a little bit, and then even play it down with the opacity, change even the color blending mode to something that works. I feel like maybe multiply works, and it's gonna add to just that little bits of texture that are really interesting. And that's really quick way. I would not do that at the final pieces. You'll have to render on top of that. Otherwise, it's gonna look like right now. It looks a little bit like I just basically painted texture and let it there. You want to be able to just like have the texture mixed inside. Oh, I took out the, oh, sorry, I took out the layer with the texture first that I did. I'll repaint it. So you want to make sure that to mix it up with the rendering that you'll do of the portrait. I'm going to add the highlights again here. So make sure that you're on your separate layer so you can put down the opacity, and then just add that little bit of texture that kind of goes at the right places. So that's one thing. I think the thing, if I had to give you more feedback, and I do want to, so I will. Just want to maybe add some more kind of texture here a little bit. So you see what I do here is, let me redo it again, is I'm adding like the highlight here kind of goes into the skin in the shadow, and then I take the saffron brush to round up and delete it. So I have just like, I have the natural gradation that comes from one side to another side. So yeah, just a little bit more of highlights that comes here, that comes there, and this is going to add just a little bit more texture, adding a little bit more like the clothing could be one thing also. Like you just push that light with just a bit more of texture brushes. You want to add some spot there and then delete them a little bit. It's just going to add a little bit more fun to this texture right there. It's quite easy to do too. Just on a new layer, and you add that. The one thing that I would work on this illustration, the rest of it, it's probably the hair. If you didn't go through the hair yet, maybe that's a good step for you. Go through the hair tutorial, because you painted with a lot of texture real fast. You would have to probably just build more 3D. I don't know how big your beard is, but probably that you would have like a shadow here and then like a highlight here, and that's how I like to build hair really. is you want to think about like, all right, this is a 3D shape, like that little pinch there, right? And so once, oops, yes, like once that established as like as a 3D shape, then you can go inside that shape and start adding like more details. But right now, I feel like the beard is a bit flat with like details placed on the edges because of that, which it all depends also with like your with the beard itself. But starting with like the basic like I would start the beard by, and that's why if you go into the if you go into the hair tutorial, you'll see that, you know, what I do is usually is let's say I have a head, you know, and then the beard, which will be like this. Let's say that's the ear. Whoops. That's the ear. I'm just gonna try to make it clearer for you. So we have the beard here, we have the nose here. So that's the beard. You want to build that as a block, basically. So it's like, all right, so you have like that's like a big block with like different edges, right? So there's like a change of plane here. There's maybe another change of plane there that goes into that. Maybe you have like another plane here, like you got a mustache, which is a plane as well. You have that piece here as another piece there. Those are all different planes. Like if you think like if it was a sculpture, that's how you want to think about it. It's like, all right, if that's a sculpture, maybe you have like even the chin, like there's a bit of the chin at the bottom here. Maybe there's another small plane that goes like that. And so each of those different plane is going to have a different value in it. Let me try to do that real quick so you understand. Now, don't promise I'm going to do miracles here. I'll probably go fast, but I think you'll be able to understand even if I go fast. So I'm just going to make a quick selection of the whole beard like that. And then on a new layer, what I'm going to do is, so here we have, oops, you have one plane, and then this one changes to another plane, and then this one kind of is back to this plane and change a little bit in color, and then maybe it's getting darker here, and then let's hit the lights, and then that part, oops, that part is all in the shadow. Whoops. That part is all in the shadow, but already that's darker in the shadow a little bit. And I forgot to do the inside. Let me do the inside real quick. Make selection, subtract. Okay. So you have this here, and then that goes to dark on the other side. And I kind of already established this one here. That could be there, and that could be darker right there. Kind of do that. And so you see now there's already volume into it. Like it's very subtle changes of plane, subtle changes of sorry, subtle changes of value, but it doesn't feel flat. It feels like there's volume to it. And so you want to establish this before you add texture to your hair. So anyway, I think all of this is really well explained also into the, and I made you a tattoo on your face of like a beard man. I think all of this is really explained into the hair tutorial, so you're able to go through it. So sorry for clearing my throat every 2 seconds. That's how I would approach this. Other thing that I would like to say is maybe that little piece here. I'm assuming you chose like a picture reference. As an illustrator, though, you have the control over the cropping of what you're doing, right? It's not like a photography. Well, photography does also have it, but like this like this is kind of, it's because it's just a little piece, it's kind of not part of the illustration. I would either take it off completely or make it like more like obvious by having like, whoops, sorry, by having like a bigger piece here, and then, you know, having whatever print you have in it. But just having a little piece like that is not good for the composition. So yeah, I hope this is helping. Thanks for sharing, Ken. Next, we have Bob. Bob, you've been patient. You've been there since the beginning. I'll go through your stuff. So images, you were talking about your tablet. You had problem with your Nexus Pro, which I never used. So hardness is softness. Roundness, spacing. When you're talking about the when you're talking about the hardness, you're talking about the preference of the pen, or you're talking about the preference of the brushes? If you can answer that in the chat, that would be awesome, since I think you're still there. So first of all, great job, Bob. It looks great. Let me just make a copy of this here. And I'll make that bigger. Boom. All right, the pen. Well, I can't really help you with that because it's a different tablet than mine. If you have trouble though with smoothing the lines, are you using Photoshop? If you are using Photoshop, there's always the smoothing right here that you can use. If you put it really, really big, and I'm assuming you already know that, but just in case, if you're putting really big, it's going to give you like very smooth lines. You can take your time. You can really like do some very slow line and do just contours, where if you put it at 0, then it's going to become very, whoops, if you put it to 0, then it's going to become much more difficult to do. So you can play with the smooth lines here. Usually I put it at 10 to give me just enough control. Okay, well, Lazy Lizumi would work as well. It's pretty much the same thing. Actually, I think Lizumi is even better than that. All that being said, Bob, you did a great job. I think if I had to point out a few things, would be the shapes, the shape design. Try to establish better shapes before doing the rendering. Like the eyes, for example. You see that curve here? The curve here is very important because it gives away the direction of the eye, the way it is. Let me just make a copy here. Like this curve right here is really important. And then what you have here is a dent in it. So you want to be able to smooth that up and bring it back up. I'm going to use a different brush than that. And just bring back that shape of the eye. So that's one thing. Be careful with maybe the brightness of your highlights. The highlights that she has here, even the contrast in the eye, you know, like that line could be just a little bit toned down, just to give it a little bit more realism. And I'll just try to reestablish that. So that's going to bring back the shape of the eye, and then if you want to push the highlights like you had, because I think it was still nice. You can still do it, but I was just looking at the reference picture from too close, but I think it's matching whatever you did here. So that's good. Just make sure when you're doing shapes, especially for circle, I have lots of difficulties with circles, and I'm assuming you do too. Just try to take a lasso tool. Take a lasso tool, make a shape with shift here on a new layer. Then you can go to selection, and do border. You can put, I guess 3 pixels should be enough. And then you can fill that up with whatever color you want. And then here you have a perfect circle. You can go place it. So if you wanted to have it black, because I think in this case it was black, then you can go ahead and just place it perfectly at the right place. And then kind of delete whatever you don't need. Oops. Take that out first. Delete what you ever don't need. And then, yeah, you can just continue like rendering within the form. Usually it's going to be easier this way. Probably like take out this here. It's like a little bit more, and then you could maybe reestablish the eyes here, something like that. I know in my case, I would have just toned down the black here because I feel like it's just doesn't look realistic enough. But at that point, that's stylization that you can absolutely go your way. There's no wrong way. So yeah, so that's one thing. I'm glad you like the circle idea. Yeah, I usually do that when I try like a bunch of times and the circle doesn't work, then I just take a selection and do it. I mean, perfect circle are done by machines or people that do a million circle every day. It's not my fun doing circles, so usually I get help. I mean, even traditional media would have like those little gabarit circle to help them with. So that's one thing I would do, Bob. I'm gonna make a copy here so we have. Oops, yeah. If we have an example, I'm gonna put that all together. I would just work with more time to establish the shapes of your eyes, especially the eyes. I mean, if you want to have like a little bit more stylization in terms of shapes everywhere else, that's fine. But the eyes are very like the soul of a portrait, right? So you really want to be careful. And same thing with the shapes of the eyebrows, for example. Like, try to bring things to their geometric shapes, the closest geometric shapes. Like this is like very like thick, and there's like a very sharp edge here, and then it does that. Where here you have, we're losing the shape a little bit, right? It's kind of a little bit like that. It's not catastrophic, but if you're able to just take more of your time and just try to reestablish a little bit more of that shape, I think it's going to help with the realism of your portraits. But beside that, I think you did a great job. Thanks for sharing. That's really nice. And I think with this one, it's the last one for today, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in the chat. That's always a pleasure to work on your work. I'm looking forward to continue working on your work next month for the next workshop. In the meantime, if you are an illustration from imagination, we are starting today, so I hope you're excited. I'm looking forward to start with you guys. And for the rest, have a good day. Happy painting, and I'll talk to you soon.